Welcome back once again to another special edition of Cape Today. As always, I am joined by Erika Brown. She's the publisher and editor of The Cricket, coming to us from her beautiful office in downtown Manchester by the Sea. How are you, Erika?
Living the best life, Kory, living the best life. We haven't done this for a while, and I'm glad to see that without any communication, we color coordinated today.
We did, yeah. It's all earth tones, lots of earth tones today. All right, well, obviously a lot going on in your neck of the woods. We have a lot to catch up on. First of all, there was a very special guest at the recent Economic Outlook breakfast.
Yeah, the Economic Outlook breakfast for the chamber. The chamber's been really busy the last several weeks, and you and I haven't talked in a couple of weeks. So it was a couple of weeks back now that Kim Driscoll, the Lieutenant Governor, came up and spoke at the Economic Outlook breakfast for the chamber. It was at the cruise port. There were a lot of people who showed up. It was really good. It was kind of the first big event for the new team over there at the chamber. So Steve Buckley and Bernie Romanofsky and the rest of the crew, which anyway, it was really amazing. She did a really good job. And I'll tell you, if I could say one thing, I would say it felt good to be on Cape Ann and know that the Lieutenant Governor is the former mayor of Salem, because she was like in her own, it felt like she was home, even though it's not Salem, it's a little, but the North Shore thing. I mean, she talked, first of all, she came late, as most politicians always run late. But she made up for lost time because she was so in command with everything. And she just went through her speech. She talked about the budgeting process. Anne Margaret Ferrante was there, and they were a great tag team together. Anne Margaret Ferrante was like a regular comic. She was doing the dun dun,
She can let her rip. Oh yeah.
Was it? She was it takes talent to be the chairman of the vice chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, and to be able to have a comedy routine on budgeting. Anyway, but the Lieutenant Governor was awesome. She talked about budgeting, but she really easily referred to things that were really local, like it wasn't forced. So she was talking about GMGI, sort of the technology economy, sort of the blue economy. She was talking about the creative economy. She brought up, Gloucester Stage Company, a big part of her thing. And this is because she's from Salem and she has so much experience with this, is about two things. Number one, tourism and understanding how to bring in economic dollars. But then also the other thing is housing. She talked a lot about housing, and in a really, really compelling way. She basically put out the call and made it personal to say, listen, could you afford to buy the house? How many people in this room can afford to buy the house that they live in today, if they were the age of when they bought it? So it was this moment where she just basically was what I would call a come on guys moment. Come on guys. And she talked about Harbor Light Partners, and she was really fantastic. She was a really good speaker, and we're lucky to have her. And then the chamber also had a lot of other things that were kind of going on at the same time. They had the big employment show for youth, and it was at the Gloucester High School. We participated in that, and a lot of kids.
Fair, yeah.
So the employment fair, exactly, and college fair. And it was really, they're really busy now. It's the busy season for them, and Kim Driscoll was a highlight. So there you go.
Very nice. We have a couple of cool human interest stories to share, starting with the Boston Post cane.
Now it's like the Boston Post cane season.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. It's a tradition.
Spring is springing, Erika.
Exactly. The Boston Post cane, of course, is a tradition that fewer and fewer municipalities participate in, because fewer and fewer municipalities still have a physical Boston Post cane.
Right.
And Boston Post cane is started in 1909 with 700 or so canes given by the Boston Post newspaper, which I didn't realize until Jim Witham from the Essex Historical Museum said it this week. He said that at the time in 1909, the Boston Post was the second largest newspaper by circulation in America.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I thought it was kind of like the precursor to the Boston Herald or the Boston Globe, but no, it was a big one. And the publisher at the time gave out 700 canes to municipalities in New Hampshire and Massachusetts to give out to the eldest living male at the time in each municipality. And then a couple of years after that, in the 1930s, they opened it up to women as well. Although not every municipality adopted that. For instance, Essex, which we're talking about, did that in the 1930s, but Manchester didn't include women until, you remember, a couple of years ago. So So anyway, so precious few exist today because first of all, they're 18 karat gold mahogany walking sticks. They're really beautiful. They're probably very expensive to replicate. And many of the families that received them at the time over the years thought they were a gift. And some people got buried with them. They just got lost, they ended up in a closet. So Essex this week. Sorry, that was a long intro.
That's all right. I think, I mean, I think the winner could wait it out. So it's, we're good.
So this week, it was actually last week that the Board of Selectmen over in Essex gave it to Lorraine Hardy Wyatt. I'm sorry, I almost said Whitman. And she's 97 years old. And let me tell you, she doesn't look a day over 65. Like she stopped playing tennis at 90. She's married into the kind of the Hardy Hatchery family from over in Essex. Yeah. 3+ generations chicken farm over in Island Road. And then they moved, I think, over to John Wise Avenue, which is where they were until they closed about 10 years ago. It's where Palazzolo is now, right on John Wyatt. But anyway, so she was married into that family and worked as the bookkeeper there for decades and decades and decades. She's an avid reader. She's full of pep. I mean, I hate to sound like a cliche, but she is super healthy and super on it. Mm-hmm. And it was super funny to watch a packed house look at all these people, Senator Bruce Tarr, Jim Witham, who I just mentioned, the Board of Selectmen, Ruth Perrine, the chairman. They kept offering her a chair. She kept on looking at them like, I don't need a chair. Cool. Anyway, so she's very gracious. She ended up sitting in the chair and she got, the proclamation, and all this stuff. And it was a lot of fun. It was a packed house because it was a popular family and she's a popular lady. They had an after party downstairs at the library and it was really a lot of fun. It was just really lovely to see a packed house out for something like this. And with the shape she's in, my prediction is she's going to be like holding that cane for a long time. Mm-hmm. She still drives, by the way. She still drives. 97.
Good for her. Yeah. Cheers, Lorraine. Awesome stuff, Erika. Okay. Another great conversation you had recently was with author Stella Nahatis.
Oh, yeah. Stella Nahatis. That was also, she's a first-time writer. And I love this story just because, you hear people all the time. You say, you should write a memoir. You should write a memoir. Or I'm going to write a memoir. And very few people do it. And even fewer people do it well. She's a first-time writer and she worked for this was a COVID project. It took her over 2 years to do it. And it took her just a couple months to write. And then the rest of the time she's editing and working it. And it's a really excellent memoir with a really unbelievable story about her getting orphaned with her younger sister at 10 in the middle, in very rural Greece, where her parents both died. And they were separated for 8 years. And the opening of the story is so poignant in that I love this. And I wrote about this in my piece about her. She opens up the book by being woken up in the middle of the night in a boarding house, which her parents and her sister and her shared a room. And she had a very kindly, landlady, but they were squeezed into a room. She was woken up in the middle of the night. Her uncle was coming to get them in a taxi cab. They didn't ask any questions. They were just good girls who did the right thing. And there's this story about her going out to a taxi cab, which she couldn't believe it. She kind of wide-eyed because they were poor and they never were they'd never been inside of a taxi cab. They only took like big buses to go everywhere. And she's in the bus, in the middle of the night, and she's describing this story where they drive. Her normally gregarious and fun uncle is in the front seat, and he's a little more muted, and she doesn't ask any questions, neither does her sister. And they're in the back of this cab, and they go to a cemetery. They hear a big thud outside. They're not allowed out of the cab. He gets back in. They're on this long drive to their mother's village. And she kept on looking outside the cab with her sister at people who in the dawn hours would stand on the side of the road when the taxi cab would go. And some of them would like give the cross and stand out of respect. She had no idea her mother was in the back of the cab in a coffin, and that and these people were of course standing out of respect and looking at she and her sister. And the whole time she was thinking, oh, they must be looking at us because they're jealous that we get to ride in a cab. I mean, it's so
Amazing.
sweet. So it's kind of an amazing story. I don't know if she's a budding writer. I asked her if she was going to do it again. She said, "My guess is it's too soon." But it's a big accomplishment to write a book and a good one at that. And so I just wanted to give her a little shout out. It's a very good story.
Very nice. Yeah, cheers, Stella, to that. And finally, Erica, there's a lot going on in both municipalities. Can you give us a quick rundown?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot going on. First of all, we're coming up on the deadline for people to return papers. So it's going to be election season before we know it. It's the end of March is when your papers are due back with all the signatures. It looks like we're going to have a contested race in Manchester, actually two of them for select board and planning board. It's not quite as clear over in Essex what's going to be happening. Nor is it clear with the school committee, which I'd like to watch too, which would be both towns. But in any case, that's coming up. There's a lot of stuff with the annual town meeting in Manchester that hits first. That's going to be at the beginning of April. So the warrant is now finalized, but we can talk about this over the next couple of weeks. A couple of big things that are happening. Number one, the planning board is going to really scale back. It's 4 articles. I think they're only going to have 1 of their articles. So that's going to be on the warrant. There's going to be 4 articles on the warrant from the planning board, but there's only going to be 1 that they're going to put forward. So we can talk about that later. And that has to do with zoning, which we seem to talk about all the time now. And then separately from this is another kind of big story that's looming we can talk about over the next couple of weeks is, remember that Board of Health water regulation that was proposed? It was written by the Manchester Essex Conservation Trust and presented at a full cloth to a Board of Health, a community health regulation, which has the power of a bylaw without a 2/3 vote at town meeting. So it was very, very controversial because it all went about land use. And the planning board did not like it one bit and wrote up their response to the Board of Health, which they gave over about 3 weeks ago. Well, the Board of Health has met and they're going to start fresh, which I think is probably, given the feedback that they've gotten, is the right move. They have a new health director over there at the Board of Health, so they're going to start fresh and they're going to have 3 drinking water regulations, and they're going to mimic the very rigorous regulations that exist in other municipalities. And really, it's going to be focused rather than land use, which is, we're going to decide if you decide to build a swimming pool that somehow that's going to impact water quality, which it doesn't, right? It doesn't. What they're going to do instead is they're going to say, we're going to go after the contaminants. And the contaminants are what we're going to rigorously defend, which is what other municipalities do. And they're going to focus on private wells. They're going to focus on small independent water treatment plants, water and sewer, people who are hooked up to town water and sewer. That's the safety code, right? That is it. That's your safety net. And so they're going to not go after those people. And that's where the real angst was with the former proposal. So that was, what was going to impact 80% of people's properties is now going to cover 100% of people's drinking water and the contaminants there for the public drinking water, which I think is really good. So that's what they're going to do, and we can talk about that later. And then, of course, there's a big news and with the water task force over in Manchester, and I would imagine Essex is going to start looking, and then everybody else on Cape Ann is PFAS, those forever chemicals. The EPA came out with their new standards last week, and it was 70 parts per million. So that was 70. Massachusetts was 20 parts per million. So it kind of gave you this idea of it's good to live in Massachusetts because they're so rigorous, right? The EPA changed its level from 70, wait for it, to 4.
Oh.
Yeah. 70 to 4. I mean, you could have bowled me over with a feather. So there's a lot of stuff. Now, PFAS is everywhere. It's in some places more than others if you're connected with a firefighting foam. So a lot of airports, military uses, et cetera, where there's drills and trainings and stuff. But it's in everything. It's in everything from polar fleece to nonstick cookware to the linings of cans for food, things like that. Anything that's nonstick or waterproof. Think of that. And there's like 300 chemicals. By the way, the EPA only regulates 6 of those 300 chemicals. So that's going to be something that everyone's going to have to tune into now. that everybody, and by the way, the answer to that is going to be that everyone's going to be mandated to treat your water, your municipal water, drinking water, at the source, sort of at the water source, so where your water comes out. So it's not going to be about, oh, you're not going to be able to paint your house. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, because the PFAS police are coming. It's going to be this idea that it's everywhere and it's going to get treated for everybody. So that's what it's going to be. And by the way, Manchester has been testing regularly for over a year now, and they've always come in under the 20. There've been a couple of flukes where they went just slightly over the 20, but it turned out that the same lab gave them two different results, and they've consistently come in under 20, like 16, 17, 18, that kind of thing. So there you go.
Interesting stuff as always, Erika. We'll see you this time next week.
Yeah, great to see you again.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.